Amy Lynn Bradley was just 23 years old when she vanished from the Royal Caribbean's Rhapsody of the Seas on March 24, 1998. But how does a person just disappear off a cruise ship? This cold case is heating up, thanks to a new Netflix documentary, but we've still got questions. The night of March 23, 1998, Amy and her brother Brad were hanging out at a disco at the top of the ship until the early hours of the next morning. According to Brad, around 3:00 a.m., he went out to the upper deck for a half an hour or so, then returned to their room. A few minutes later, Amy came back to their room, and the two hung out on the balcony for some time before Brad decided to go to bed. Amy stayed outside, and her father, Ron, says he woke up around 5:30, saw that she was still there with the door closed, and went back to sleep until 6 a.m., at which point he saw that she had disappeared.
I noticed that the balcony door was open, about 12 to 14 inches. I noticed that her cigarettes weren't out there.
Amy's shirt was left on a chair in the room, and the shoes she'd been wearing remained on the balcony. Ron left the room to look for Amy, thinking she had changed and gone to get coffee before the ship docked in Curaçao. But when nothing came of his brief search, he returned to the room and let the rest of the family know. Around 7 a.m., Ron and Amy's mother, Iva, went down to the ship's purser's office and asked if an announcement could be made that they were looking for their daughter. They were told no. Brent Hunter, the guest relations manager, explained during an interview for Netflix Amy Bradley is Missing that he told the Bradleys a ship-wide announcement that early would be intrusive to the other guests.
They were really concerned and, a bit forceful in wanting to know what we could do.
Hunter told Ron and Iva to spend a half an hour looking around the ship, and if they still weren't able to find Amy, to come back and they would make an announcement. But there was another problem. The ship had just docked, and passengers were getting ready to disembark. The Bradleys asked that the ship keep the gangway up until they'd located Amy, but they were again refused. Kirk Detweiler, the cruise director, heard the eventual ship announcement requesting that Amy head to the purser's office just before he announced the opening of the gangway.
We're not going to stop everybody's cruise because there was a missing girl. That's one family's unfortunate incident.
Brad told People magazine shortly after the documentary aired that Detweiler's attitude was indicative of how the family was treated during their search. He said, "It's my opinion that how he portrayed himself, his feelings and lack of empathy for his passengers, is fairly representative of how these industries view their customers." And things only seemed to get worse from there. Once the ship's passengers left, Detweiler and the rest of the crew performed what is called a Charlie drill, which involved all 800 to 900 crew members searching each of their assigned areas, top to bottom. The Bradleys, meanwhile, were told to go back to their cabin and wait for it to be completed. Eventually, the captain came to see them and told them that after a thorough search, Amy was not aboard. But according to Brad, there wasn't much of a search at all.
They searched restrooms and public areas, but not all the crew's cabins or the passengers' cabins or anything to that degree.
At this point, the ship's crew assumed Amy must have fallen overboard, and local Curaçao police got involved. But they had doubts about the overboard theory. The harbor police chief told the Amy Bradley is Missing crew that the waters surrounding the island have a very strong current, meaning that if Amy had entered the water, she would have made it ashore in some way. The Dutch Caribbean Marines, Coast Guard, and Navy all got involved in the search as well, and they came to the same conclusion.
Because of the position of the boat, wind force, sea current, was wave height, the body would have washed up.
By the time the FBI got involved in the case, Amy had been missing for 2 days. Agents boarded the ship in St. Martin and conducted a search of the Bradleys' room, but there was a problem there too.
The Bradley room had been cleaned before the FBI even was able to get on board, which was unfortunate because if there was evidence,
any potential evidence related to a possible crime hadn't been preserved, so tracking Amy's last steps on the ship would have to come down to eyewitness testimony. The night before Amy disappeared, she had been hanging out with a man, Alister "Yellow" Douglas. Douglas was the bass player for the ship's band, Blue Orchid, and he apparently took a strong liking to Amy. According to Brad, when Amy came back to their room that night, she told him that Douglas had gotten a little too close while they were dancing, but several passengers later recalled seeing Amy with Douglas in the early morning hours of March 24th.
Amy and the band member walk over and up to the next deck up above us, and then about 10 minutes later, he came walking around by himself.
Brad also said that Douglas approached him before anyone knew Amy was missing to say that he was sorry to hear about his sister. The FBI questioned him just before the cruise ended, and Douglas took a polygraph. The results were inconclusive, but Douglas was let go. In 2024, Douglas gave an interview with James Renner's True Crime This Week, in which he reiterated that he had nothing to do with Amy's disappearance, and that the last time he spoke to her was about 5 minutes before 1 a.m.
That was my last conversation, and
That was the last time you saw her?
last time I saw her.
But Douglas can't seem to escape suspicion. In an interview for Amy Bradley is Missing, his daughter, Amika, said that after he returned from the cruise, her mother found a bag of photographs of white women, which Douglas had brushed off. And according to Amika, Douglas gets angry anytime Amy is brought up.
I understand that her family is maybe trying to find her all these years. And I'm in sympathy with that, but I had nothing to do with that.
Douglas continues to maintain his innocence. In the months and years following Amy's disappearance, multiple witnesses have come forward claiming to have seen her. The first reported sightings happened immediately after the ship docked in Curacao. When the Bradleys returned to the island to look for Amy the following month, Ron was approached by a taxi driver who said Amy had asked him where to find a phone.
He said, I never will forget her green eyes. And he said she was wearing a white top with jeans.
In August, Canadian tourist David Carmichael was on a diving trip in Porto Marie, Curacao, when he claimed to have seen Amy with 2 men walking along the beach. When Amy tried to approach him, one of the men stopped her. Carmichael is convinced that the man was Alister Douglas. Then, in January 1999, Bill Hefner, a Navy officer, stopped in a bar that doubled as a brothel. There, he was approached by a woman claiming to be Amy.
The girl leaned over and said, "My name is Amy Bradley, and I need your help."
According to Hefner, Amy said she owed the men she was with $200 and that she'd originally gone to shore to score drugs. He was skeptical though, having, quote, heard all kinds of stories from working girls. Years later, in March 2005, Judy Morer, another tourist, claims to have run into Amy in a public restroom in Barbados. Morer says she was with men. After they left the restroom, Morer tried to make small talk with Amy, but said she got in her face. When Morer left, she saw the men surround Amy and walk her out. The FBI followed up on every tip, but largely due to them coming in long after the sightings actually occurred, nothing came of these investigations. Aside from the idea that Amy fell or was pushed overboard, there are a few other theories about what happened to her, and 2 of them are especially questionable. The first is that Amy, who was a trained lifeguard, had decided to jump from the ship and swim to shore.
From what I heard through the grapevine, she'd kind of bragged that she was a good swimmer. She was going to jump in the water and try to beat the ship ashore.
That idea was quickly dismissed. The second theory that the family has had to contend with is that Amy took her own life. That one is based on her sexuality. Amy had come out to her parents while she was in college, and according to one of Amy's exes, they weren't happy about it. Ron has expressed that while it wasn't what they would choose for her, it wasn't his life, while Iva was mostly worried that Amy would have difficulty because of the social climate in the 90s. Both of the Bradleys, though, have maintained that they loved their daughter deeply. Investigators did look into a potential suicide, and some of Amy's friends considered the theory as well. But prior to the cruise, Amy was building a life. She'd just gotten a new job, a new apartment, and a dog. Ultimately, those closest to her, along with the FBI agent who handled the case, don't believe Amy would have taken her own life. One of the more plausible theories behind Amy's disappearance is that she was trafficked and sold into sexual slavery. In September 2005, the Bradleys received an email with a link to photographs from an adult website advertising escort services. The woman in the photos bore a striking resemblance to Amy, but because she had been missing for so many years at this point, the family couldn't be sure what she looked like. The FBI had photos forensically analyzed, and their expert believes that the person in the photo is, in fact, Amy. Unfortunately, they ran into an issue with the images.
The difficult part is, back then, information such as that or pictures such as that, you cannot tell when they're altered.
A 2025 Reddit post on the Amy Lynn Bradley subreddit dug further into the photos and found a link to additional images of the same woman, taken from different angles. In the new images posted, tattoos that Amy was known to have had, which weren't visible in the initial photos sent to the Bradleys, are missing altogether. While it's possible the images were altered or mirrored to hide them, there's no way to truly know for sure. In 2014, online investigator Anthony Willis became interested in Amy's case. He noticed that information regarding her disappearance was spread out over different forums and websites and decided to create a centralized source for information. In 2018, he launched amybradleyismissing.com.
It has photographs, sightings, a lot of archived links, all of the tips, leads, different theories.
Once the site was up and running, the Bradley family took notice, and Iva struck up a friendship of sorts with Willis. She actually got David Carmichael, the diver who claimed to have seen Amy and Porto Marie, involved in the site, as he had a background in telecommunications. Carmichael suggested mining the website for IP data, and when they did, they discovered that many of the hits were coming from Bridgetown, Barbados, the last place Amy had presumably been seen. From there, the three began to update the site with family photos, and they noticed a strange pattern. IPs in Curaçao and Barbados were spending a significant amount of time on the site on holidays and Bradley family birthdays. So, who is visiting the site? Carmichael has a theory that it's either the people responsible for Amy's disappearance keeping tabs on the investigation, or it's Amy herself. We might never find out who it really is, though. The legal process to get international subscriber information makes it nearly impossible for the FBI to track down specific names. As of August 2025, the Bradley family continues to hold out hope of finding Amy, and they're going about it the way anyone would in the social media age, by reaching out to Kim Kardashian. After watching Amy Bradley is Missing, Kardashian posted a photo to her social media and included a comment about how crazy Amy's story is. TMZ got a hold of a DM Brad sent to Kardashian, in which he asked for her help, along with that of a couple other high-profile people. He wrote in part, "We are seeking any additional help and resources to find her. We also need help getting this in front of President Trump, because we feel like he could make a difference. We are also hoping to get Rihanna involved since she is from Barbados." Brad also brought up his disappointment in how Amy's case has been handled, writing, "The FBI agents in charge of Amy's case dropped the ball from day one and have been sitting on their hands for years and years." Brad told TMZ that the family has received numerous new tips since the Netflix documentary aired. Will Kardashian help influence the investigation? Only time will tell.